The stars looked different from the observation deck of the USS Horizon. Captain Lisa Jordan stood with her hands clasped behind her back, watching as the small alien ship approached. Her heart beat faster, but her face remained calm. This was a historic moment, the first official meeting between humans and the Ceridians. "Captain, they're requesting permission to dock," said Communications Officer Sam Miller. "Permission granted," Lisa replied. "Alert the welcome team." Lisa straightened her uniform and took a deep breath. 6 months ago, the Horizon had encountered the Ceridian scout ship near Jupiter's orbit. After initial communications were established, both species had agreed to this formal meeting. The aliens seemed peaceful and interested in cultural exchange. The docking bay doors opened with a soft hiss. Lisa stood at attention alongside Dr. Alan Weber, the ship's chief biologist, and 5 other crew members chosen for first contact. The alien ship connected with a gentle thud. "Remember," Lisa whispered to her team, "no sudden movements." The airlock cycled and 3 Ceridians stepped onto the Horizon. They were tall, about 7 feet, with slender bodies and iridescent skin that shifted colors like oil on water. Their 4-fingered hands had no nails, and their large eyes blinked sideways instead of up and down. "Welcome aboard the USS Horizon," Lisa said, stepping forward with a slight bow. The greeting their communication teams had agreed upon. The lead Ceridian, Ambassador Kavoth, returned the gesture. "We thank you for your hospitality, Captain Jordan." The words came through the translator pinned to the alien's chest covering. His skin rippled with blue and green patterns, colors that the humans had learned meant interest and excitement. "These are my associates," Kavoth continued, gesturing to the others. "Senior Researcher Vilan and Security Coordinator Terrell." Lisa introduced her team, and they moved to the conference room prepared for this meeting. The walls were decorated with images of Earth and humanity's achievements in space exploration. Kavoth studied the images with his large eyes. "Your species has accomplished much despite your physical limitations." Alan tilted his head. "Limitations? You have no natural weapons," Vilan explained, skin pulsing with gentle yellow light. "No claws, minimal strength compared to other Earth predators, thin skin with no armor. Yet you explored your entire planet and now reach for the stars." Lisa smiled. "We've learned to adapt and overcome." "This is what fascinates us," Kavoth said. "Your fearlessness seems unusual for a species with so few natural defenses." The meeting continued for several hours. The Ceridians proposed a cultural exchange. A team of human scientists would visit their homeworld, while a group of Ceridians would study Earth. They offered medical technology far beyond human capabilities in exchange for the opportunity to study Earth's biology and cultures. Later, in the ship's briefing room, Lisa met with her senior staff. "They seem particularly interested in our biology," Alan said, reviewing his notes, "especially our immune system and brain functions." "Is that concerning?" asked Security Chief Grace Peters. Alan shook his head. "Not really. Their biology is very different from ours. They probably just want to understand how we function in environments they find challenging." "What do we know about their homeworld?" Lisa asked. "Ceridia orbits a red dwarf star," said Science Officer Ben Collins. "It's slightly larger than Earth with higher gravity and a thicker atmosphere. Their civilization is about 300 years ahead of ours technologically." "And they've never shown any aggression?" Grace asked. "None," Lisa confirmed. "All communications have been peaceful. They seem genuinely curious about us." The next morning, Lisa received approval from Earth Command to proceed with the exchange program. 5 human scientists, led by Alan, would travel to Ceridia. In return, 6 Ceridians would visit Earth. On the day of departure, Lisa walked with Alan to the shuttle bay. "Be careful out there," she said. "You're representing all of humanity now." Alan nodded, adjusting the small bag of personal items on his shoulder. "I still can't believe I was chosen for this." "You're the best biologist we have," Lisa said. "And you've shown a natural ability to communicate with the Ceridians." "They're fascinating," Alan admitted. "Their entire evolution took a different path than ours. They evolved without many of the predator pressures we faced on Earth. Which explains their interest in our fearlessness, Lisa said. Exactly. Their planet had fewer large predators, and their species developed group defense mechanisms instead of fight-or-flight responses like ours. The Ceridian ship was waiting, its smooth hull gleaming under the bay lights. The rest of Alan's team gathered nearby: Dr. Maya Patel, the immunologist, Dr. Keith Bowman, the neurologist, Dr. Olivia Taylor, the anthropologist, and Dr. Frank Rodriguez, the geneticist, will send regular updates, Alan promised. Lisa nodded. The communication relay should allow daily reports. Ambassador Kavath approached them. Dr. Weber, we are honored by your willingness to visit our world. The honor is ours, Alan replied. As the human team boarded the alien vessel, Lisa couldn't shake a feeling of unease. Not about the Ceridians, they had proven themselves peaceful and respectful. It was something else, something she couldn't name. The Ceridian ship departed smoothly, leaving the horizon behind. Lisa watched from the observation deck as it disappeared into the darkness of space. Captain, Sam's voice came through her communicator. We've received the first transmission from Earth. The Ceridian delegation has arrived safely. Good, Lisa replied. Keep me updated on their activities. What none of them knew was that the Ceridians' innocent scientific curiosity would soon uncover something that would change relations between their species forever. Among Earth's countless wonders and horrors, one particular Earth organism would soon reveal to the aliens exactly why humans had evolved such complex fear responses, and why, perhaps, fear was sometimes the most rational response of all. 39. Ceridians believed humans feared nothing. They were about to discover how wrong they were. On Earth, the Ceridian scientists began their studies with enthusiasm, unaware that in their questions about human biology and disease lay the seeds of a terrible revelation, one that would make them question everything they thought they knew about the courage of humanity. The Ceridian Research Center on their homeworld reminded Alan of a beehive made of glass and silver. Curved walls rose into delicate spires, and the entire structure seemed to glow from within. After 3 weeks on Ceridia, Alan and his team were still adjusting to the higher gravity and the strange pink-orange light from the red dwarf sun. Alan sat in the laboratory with senior researcher Valan, studying cellular samples. The Ceridian scientist moved with a fluid grace that made Alan feel clumsy in comparison. Your immune system is remarkably aggressive, Valan said, his skin rippling with patterns of yellow and green. It attacks foreign bodies with a violence we find surprising. Alan nodded. Earth has millions of pathogens. Our bodies evolved strong defenses. Yet you sleep, Valan said. You willingly enter an unconscious state for hours each day. How do you manage such vulnerability? The question caught Alan off guard. I guess we've never thought about it that way. We need sleep to survive. But you evolved with predators all around you, Valan insisted. Creatures that could kill you while you slept. That's why we built shelters and formed communities, Alan explained. Safety in numbers. Valan's skin darkened slightly. Perhaps. But we still find human fearlessness unusual. Later that evening, Alan met with his team in their living quarters. The space was comfortable but alien. Curved walls, strange lighting, and furniture designed for Ceridian bodies. They keep asking about fear, Maya said, the immunologist leaning forward. Valan asked me today if humans feel terror. Keith, the neurologist, nodded. Same here. Their questions about our brain chemistry focus on threat responses. It's because their evolution was different, Olivia explained. From what I've learned, Ceridians faced fewer predators. They evolved as colony organisms with collective defense mechanisms rather than individual fight-or-flight responses. Frank, the geneticist, joined the conversation. They're fascinated by our adrenal system, the way our bodies flood with chemicals during danger. Alan rubbed his chin. They see us as fearless because we've evolved to face our fears. They don't understand that we're not fearless. We're fear managers. Meanwhile, on Earth, the Ceridian delegation was conducting their own research. Led by Sub-Ambassador Jarek, They had established a temporary base in Colorado. The 6 aliens had visited hospitals, universities, and research centers across the country, gathering data on human biology and culture. On a cool morning in late spring, Jurek and 2 other Ceridians met with Dr. Emma Nelson, director of the National Institute of Infectious Diseases. "We appreciate your cooperation," Jurek said, his translator converting the musical clicks of his language into English. "We are particularly interested in how humans have adapted to pathogenic threats." Emma smiled. "We've made great progress in disease control over the past century. Many deadly diseases have been eliminated or contained through vaccination and public health measures. Yet some remain," said Gamor, the Ceridian medical specialist. "We would like to understand more about diseases that affect neural function." Emma led them to a secure laboratory where samples of various pathogens were stored. "We maintain these for research purposes," she explained. "Every major disease is cataloged and studied." Gimor's skin rippled with interest as he examined the database. "What is this one, rabies virus?" "That's a particularly nasty infection," Emma said. "It attacks the central nervous system. Without treatment, it's almost always fatal once symptoms appear." Jurek leaned closer to the screen. "It causes behavioral changes?" "Yes," Emma replied. "The virus actually alters behavior to facilitate transmission. Infected animals become aggressive and bite others, spreading the virus through saliva." The Ceridian's skin flickered with rapid color changes, a reaction Emma hadn't seen before. "And humans can contract this?" Gamor asked, his voice sounding strange through the translator. "Yes, though it's rare now due to animal vaccination programs and post-exposure treatments. We would like to see historical records of this disease," Jurek said. "If possible." Emma hesitated. "I can arrange access to our medical archives, but may I ask why this particular disease interests you?" "Scientific curiosity," Jurek said, but his skin had darkened to a deep purple, a color Emma didn't recognize. Back on Ceridia, Alan's team was making progress with their research. They had learned much about Ceridian biology and culture, and the exchange of scientific knowledge was benefiting both species. But Alan couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed in the way the Ceridians interacted with them. "They're keeping their distance," he told his team one evening. "Have you noticed?" Maya nodded. "Vilan used to work right next to me. Now he stays across the room. And they've increased the filtration in our living quarters," Frank added. "I saw them installing new systems yesterday." "Maybe they're concerned about Earth bacteria?" Keith suggested. Alan frowned. "Maybe. But they knew about that risk from the beginning. Something else has changed." The next day, Alan was invited to meet with the Ceridian Science Council, an unexpected honor. He entered the circular chamber where 7 elder Ceridians sat on raised platforms. Vilan stood to one side, his skin unusually pale. "Dr. Weber," the chief counselor said, "we have been reviewing the biological data from Earth." Alan nodded. "I hope you found it helpful." "We have found it concerning," the counselor replied, "particularly the prevalence of neurological pathogens." Alan blinked in surprise. "Neurological pathogens?" "Organisms that affect brain function," another counselor explained. "Your world has many." "Some diseases affect the nervous system, yes," Alan acknowledged, "but most are well controlled." "Yet they exist," the chief counselor said. "And they have existed alongside your species for thousands of years." Blonde stepped forward. "We have received information from our delegation on Earth about a particular virus, rabies." Alan nodded slowly. "Yes, rabies is a serious disease, but it's rare in humans now." "But it wasn't always rare," Vilan said. "And its effects are profound. It alters behavior, creates aggression, generates fear of water even as the body dehydrates." Alan felt a chill. "That's true." The chief counselor's skin rippled with dark patterns. "Dr. Weber, your species evolved on a world where organisms can hijack your mind. where invisible things can turn your thoughts against you. This explains much about human psychology. I don't understand, Alan said. We believed humans were fearless, Vlan explained. Now we see that you simply understand fear on a level we cannot comprehend. You evolved alongside predators that attack not just your bodies, but your very consciousness. The council chamber fell silent. Alan looked from one alien face to another, suddenly understanding the distance. The new filtration systems, the strange questions about fear. You're afraid of us, he said softly. Or rather, you're afraid of what we might carry. The chief counselor's skin turned a deep blue. We have no natural defenses against mind-altering pathogens, Dr. Weber. Our civilization has never encountered such things. The possibility that something like rabies could cross species barriers. It presents an existential threat we never imagined. Back on Earth, the Ceridian delegation had requested an urgent meeting with United Nations officials. The cultural exchange was about to take an unexpected turn, one that would force both species to confront the true meaning of fear. The United Nations building in New York was filled with tension. Kelly Grant, the diplomatic liaison to the Ceridian visitors, stood near the back of the emergency session. Sub-Ambassador Jurek had called for this meeting only hours after viewing historical medical footage of rabies patients. 3 of his team had immediately returned to their ship after the viewing. Secretary General Paul Martinez opened the session. We welcome our Ceridian friends and wish to address their concerns. Jurek stepped to the podium, his skin shifting through dark shades of blue and purple. The colors rippled like waves across his body. Thank you for convening this emergency session, Jurek said through his translator. What we have discovered about Earth requires immediate discussion. The room fell silent as Jurek displayed images on the large screen behind him. They showed microscopic views of several viruses and bacteria. These organisms exist naturally on your world, Jurek continued. Some of them attack the central nervous system of their hosts. They do not simply kill, they change behavior. They turn a creature against itself. Several human officials shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Rabies is perhaps the most concerning. Example, Jurek said. A virus that makes its host aggressive, forcing it to bite others, spreading the infection. It creates an irrational fear of water even as the infected body desperately needs hydration. Kelly watched the faces of her colleagues. Many looked confused about why this was causing such alarm. What particularly concerns us, Jurek explained, is that humans have evolved alongside these consciousness-corrupting organisms for your entire history. They have shaped your development as a species. Secretary General Martinez leaned forward. I understand your scientific interest, but why call an emergency session? Jurek's skin darkened further. Because our species has no experience with such pathogens. We have no natural defenses against them. The possibility of cross-species transmission represents an existential threat to Ceridian civilization. A murmur ran through the room. Kelly moved closer to the front, sensing the growing tension. Are you suggesting that Earth diseases could infect Ceridians? Martinez asked. We do not know, Jurek admitted. But we cannot risk finding out through accidental exposure. We must discuss quarantine protocols for all future interactions between our worlds. On Ceridia, Alan and his team were now confined to their living quarters. Not as prisoners, the Ceridians insisted they were guests, but they were no longer allowed to move freely through the research facility. This is ridiculous, Maya said, pacing the common room. We've been here for weeks with no issues. If we're going to infect them with something, it would have happened already. Keith shook his head. It's not about current infection. They're worried about future possibility. About what might happen if our pathogens adapt to their biology. Alan stared out the curved window at the alien landscape. The pink-orange light of the red dwarf star gave everything a strange glow. It's fear, he said quietly. Pure evolutionary fear. And they don't know how to handle it because their species never developed the tools to manage fear like we did. The door slid open and Vlan entered. He kept his distance, staying near the entrance. Dr. Weber, the Science Council requests your participation in a broadcast to Earth. They wish to explain our concerns to your leaders. Alan turned. Will you let us go home? That is being discussed, Phelan said. But understand, this is not a simple matter. For my people, the discovery of organisms that can hijack consciousness is disturbing beyond words. But rabies is controlled on Earth, Olivia said. We have vaccines, treatments. For humans, Phelan replied. Not for Ceridians, and rabies is only one example. Your world teems with organisms that alter mind function. Even your beneficial gut bacteria influence brain chemistry. Nothing like this exists in our evolutionary history. Frank stepped forward. So what happens now? That depends on the discussions between our worlds, Phelan said. But I believe some form of quarantine protocol will be necessary for all future interactions. On the USS Horizon, Captain Lisa Jordan received the transmission from Ceridia with growing concern. The Ceridian High Council had formally requested that all human visitors be removed from their world, and that strict biological containment procedures be implemented for any future contact. They're overreacting, said Communications Officer Sam Miller after the transmission ended. Are they? Lisa asked. Put yourself in their position. They've discovered that Earth organisms can literally reprogram minds. Their species never evolved defenses against that kind of threat. So what do we do? Asked Grace Peters, the security chief. We respect their wishes, Lisa replied, and we try to find a middle ground. Lisa sent a message to Earth Command, requesting permission to retrieve Alan's team from Ceridia. Then she prepared her ship for departure. She would personally lead the rescue mission if necessary. At the United Nations, the emergency session had turned into a full diplomatic crisis. The Ceridian delegation had formally requested a planet-wide quarantine of Earth. No Ceridian would visit Earth, and human space travel would be restricted to prevent accidental spread of Earth pathogens to other worlds. Kelly Grant watched as world leaders argued against these restrictions. The economic and scientific impact would be devastating after all the hope that first contact had brought. During a break in the session, she approached Jarek, who stood alone by a window. May I speak with you? She asked. Jarek turned, his skin now a muted gray. Of course, Ms. Grant. I think I understand your fear, she said. To you, rabies isn't just a disease, it's a horror story, something that violates the mind itself. Jarek's skin lightened slightly. Yes, exactly. In our evolutionary history, we faced many dangers, but nothing that could turn our minds against us. The concept is terrifying. But don't you see? Kelly said gently. That's precisely why humans appear fearless to you. Not because we don't feel fear, but because we evolved with these threats. We developed complex fear responses and medical knowledge to protect ourselves. Jarek was silent for a moment. You are suggesting that human courage comes from facing greater terrors than we can imagine. In a way, yes, Kelly replied. Our apparent fearlessness isn't ignorance of fear. It's intimate knowledge of it. When the session resumed, Secretary General Martinez proposed a compromise. Earth would share all its medical knowledge about neurological pathogens with the Ceridians. In return, the Ceridians would help establish a research station in deep space where both species could work together safely. We understand your fear, Martinez said, but we also ask you to understand our resilience. Humans have faced these threats for our entire history and learned to overcome them. Perhaps together, we can find solutions that benefit both our worlds. As the human and Ceridian officials discussed the details of the compromise, Kelly noticed a subtle change in the aliens' skin patterns. The dark colors of fear were gradually mixing with lighter shades. Colors she had learned indicated curiosity and hope. Perhaps understanding each other's fears might be the first step toward a true alliance between their worlds. The USS Horizon moved through space towards Ceridia. Captain Lisa Jordan stood on the bridge watching the alien planet grow larger on the viewscreen. It was beautiful. Swirling clouds over continents of deep red and orange. But beauty wasn't her concern right now. Getting her people back safely was all that mattered. Any response to our message? She asked Sam Miller at the communications station. Yes, Captain. The Ceridians have agreed to allow us to retrieve our team, but under strict quarantine conditions. We must follow their docking protocols exactly. Lisa nodded. Send the protocols to all department heads. I want everyone prepared. The Horizon approached the massive Ceridian space station orbiting their homeworld. Unlike human space stations with their practical angular designs, the Ceridian structure looked like a delicate silver flower floating in space. They're sending docking instructions, Sam reported. Follow them precisely, Lisa ordered. On Ceridia's surface, Alan and his team prepared to leave. They had been told to pack only essential items and leave all biological samples behind. Their clothing would be replaced with sealed Ceridian environmental suits for the journey to the ship. I feel like we're being treated as biohazards, Maya said as she packed her few personal items. To them we are, Alan replied. Their entire worldview has been shaken. They discovered that Earth organisms can do something they never evolved to defend against: attack the mind itself. Valan entered their quarters, staying near the door as usual. The transport will arrive soon. The Science Council wishes to speak with you before you leave. The humans were led to the council chamber. The elders sat in their usual places, but now a transparent barrier separated them from the visitors. Dr. Weber, the chief counselor began, we regret that our cultural exchange must end this way. Alan stepped forward. We understand your concerns, but I hope this isn't the end of relations between our worlds. It is not, the counselor assured him, but we must proceed with caution. The discovery of neurological pathogens in your biosphere requires us to rethink all aspects of our interaction. Respectfully, Alan said, these pathogens have existed on Earth since before humans evolved, yet we've learned to live with them. We've developed vaccines, treatments, and protections, because you had to, another counselor said. Your species evolved under this pressure, ours did not. Valan moved closer to the barrier. Dr. Weber, we've studied the historical records of rabies in human populations. Before your vaccines, this disease was a death sentence that turned victims into vessels for spreading the virus. We've seen the footage of patients suffering from hydrophobia, afraid of water yet dying of thirst. Alan nodded. Yes, it was terrible, but we conquered it. That is what we find remarkable, the chief counselor said. You faced a horror beyond our imagination, and you overcame it. This speaks to a resilience we had not fully appreciated. At the United Nations on Earth, discussions continued. The Ceridian request for planetary quarantine had been modified to a more limited biological research protocol. Both sides were making progress toward an agreement. Kelly Grant worked with Secretary General Martinez to draft the terms. The revised agreement would create a joint research initiative focused on the study of neurological pathogens and the development of cross-species medical treatments. This could actually lead to positive outcomes, Martinez said as they reviewed the document. Their fear has turned into scientific interest. Kelly nodded. Fear often does that when properly channeled. The Ceridians are learning that from us. Sub-Ambassador Jarek entered the room with two of his colleagues. Their skin colors had gradually shifted over the past days from dark purples and blues to lighter shades with occasional flickers of green. We have received word from our homeworld, Jarek announced. The High Council has approved the Joint Research Initiative. Martinez smiled. Excellent news. We are prepared to commit our best scientists to the project. Jarek's skin rippled with a new pattern, bands of blue and yellow. There is one additional request. The High Council wishes to establish direct communication with your medical authorities regarding disease control measures, particularly for neurological conditions. Of course, Martinez agreed. We'll arrange connections with our Centers for Disease Control and the World Health Organization. Jarek hesitated. There is something else. We would like to understand how humans manage fear, not just medically, but psychologically. How you live with the knowledge that your minds could be targeted by natural organisms. Kelly stepped forward. I believe we can help with that too. The USS Horizon docked with the Ceridian space station using their specified protocols. Lisa waited anxiously as the airlock cycled. When it opened, Alan and his team floated through in bulky Ceridian environmental suits that looked like silver cocoons. Welcome back, Lisa said over the comm system. You're on your way to decontamination. For the next 12 hours, the human scientists underwent thorough decontamination procedures designed by both human and Ceridian medical teams. Every item they brought aboard was sterilized or destroyed. Their bodies were scanned for any sign of pathogen that might pose a risk. When Alan finally emerged in a clean ship suit, Lisa was waiting for him. "How bad was it?" she asked. "The decontamination?" "Not as bad as being treated like a walking virus. For the past week," he replied with a tired smile. They walked to the ship's conference room where the rest of the science team had gathered. "Earth Command has been updating us," Lisa explained. "They've reached an agreement with the Ceridians. We're going to establish a joint research station to study cross-species medical issues." "So some good might come from this after all," Keith said. "What about the Ceridians who visited Earth?" Frank asked. "They're being recalled to their ship," Lisa answered. "They'll undergo similar decontamination before returning home." Alan stared out the viewport at the Ceridian space station. "You know what's ironic? They think we're brave because we evolved alongside mind-altering pathogens. But in reality, those pathogens helped make us what we are, a species that understands fear intimately and has learned to master it." Back on Earth, as the Ceridian delegation prepared to leave, Kelly met with Jarek one last time. "I've collected these for you," she said, handing him a data device. "Historical records of how humans have dealt with fear throughout our history. Stories, philosophies, psychological studies." Jarek accepted it with a gesture of respect. "Thank you. I believe understanding human fear may be as valuable to us as understanding your biology." "Fear isn't a weakness," Kelly told him. "It's an evolutionary tool. It helps us survive." "We're beginning to see that," Jarek replied, his skin glowing with a soft blue light. "Perhaps that is the most important lesson we can learn from humanity, not fearlessness, but the courage to face fear with understanding." As the Ceridian ship departed Earth orbit, humanity stood at the beginning of a new phase in interspecies relations, one built not on misconceptions about human fearlessness, but on a deeper understanding of how different evolutionary paths create different responses to the terrors of the universe. 6 months passed since the first contact crisis. In the darkness of space between Earth and Ceridia, a new research station took shape. Unlike traditional human stations or elegant Ceridian structures, this one was designed by both species working together. The result was practical yet beautiful. A large central hub with extending arms that housed laboratories, living quarters, and docking bays. Dr. Alan Weber floated in the observation dome, watching as a Ceridian shuttle approached. His reflection in the glass showed a tired but satisfied face. The past months had been challenging, filled with negotiations, planning, and building. Now the real work could begin. "They're right on schedule," said Dr. Maya Patel, joining him at the window. Alan nodded. The first official joint research team. The station, named Unity by mutual agreement, was the physical symbol of the new relationship between humans and Ceridians. After the initial fear and misunderstanding, both species had recognized an opportunity to learn from each other. Down in the docking bay, Captain Lisa Jordan waited alongside Kelly Grant, who had been appointed as the station's diplomatic officer. The airlock cycled and 6 Ceridians entered, wearing modified environmental suits that now looked less like isolation units and more like practical work gear. "Welcome to Unity Station," Lisa said, making the formal greeting gesture they had adopted. A slight bow with open hands. Ambassador Kavath, who had personally requested to join the research team, returned the gesture. "We are honored to be here." The Ceridians moved through decontamination, a procedure that had been standardized between the species. It was thorough but no longer treated the other species as dangerous biohazards. Later, in the station's conference room, humans and Ceridians gathered for the first official meeting. The transparent barriers that had once separated them were gone, replaced by reasonable biological safety measures that both sides had agreed upon. 6 months ago, our worlds nearly cut off contact because of fear, Alan began. Today we start a project that turns that fear into knowledge. Kavath's skin rippled with bands of blue and green, colors of agreement and hope. Indeed. What began as a discovery of horror has led to a deeper understanding between our species. The first research project they would tackle together focused on disease transmission and prevention across species barriers. Caridians brought their advanced medical technology, while humans contributed centuries of experience fighting pathogens. Our first goal is to establish baseline data on how Earth organisms might interact with Ceridian biology, said Dr. Keith Bowman, now the lead neurologist for the project. Vlan, who had also joined the team, displayed a holographic model of neural pathways, both human and Ceridian. We have already identified key differences that might prevent cross-species infection of neurological pathogens. As the meeting continued, Alan noticed how much had changed. The fear that had initially driven the Ceridians to isolate themselves had transformed into careful scientific inquiry. They no longer viewed humans as walking biohazards, but as partners who had faced terrors they could barely imagine, and survived. On Earth, Secretary General Martinez addressed the United Nations General Assembly about the progress of the Unity Project. What began as a crisis has become one of humanity's greatest opportunities, he said. The Ceridian fear of our biological threats forced both species to develop new protocols for safe interaction. Those protocols have now led to medical advances that benefit both worlds. Sub-Ambassador Jarek, who had remained on Earth as the Ceridian diplomatic representative, stood to address the assembly. 6 months ago, my people discovered something we had never imagined: organisms that could turn the mind against itself. This knowledge filled us with a fear unlike any we had known. Jarek paused, his skin shifting to softer colors. But from humans, we learned something equally valuable: how to face fear with knowledge rather than panic. Back on Unity Station, Alan worked in the main laboratory with Vlan. They were studying rabies virus samples under strict containment. The virus remained safely behind multiple layers of protection, visible only through advanced imaging technology. It still amazes me, Vlan said, that your species evolved alongside such threats. Alan adjusted the image controls. It shaped us in ways we're only beginning to understand. Our immune systems, our social structures, even our concepts of medicine, all influenced by these invisible enemies. And your psychology as well, Vlan added. Your literature is filled with themes of invisible threats, body horror, mind control. Now we understand why. We write about what we fear, Alan agreed. It helps us process and master those fears. In another section of the station, Kelly Grant met with Ambassador Kavoth. They were reviewing the cultural exchange programs that would follow the scientific mission. Your people have requested access to human psychological studies, Kelly noted. Kavoth's skin shimmered with interest. Yes, we wish to understand how humans manage fear. It is a skill my species never fully developed because we face different evolutionary pressures. And humans are interested in Ceridian collective thinking, Kelly replied. How your communities work together without the individualistic stress responses we have. A fair exchange, my Kavoth said. You teach us about fear management. We teach you about community cohesion. That evening, the station crew gathered in the communal dining area. Humans and Ceridians ate different foods but shared the same space, something that would have seemed impossible months earlier. Captain Lisa Jordan raised a glass. To Unity Station and all it represents. The humans lifted their glasses while the Ceridians touched their right hands to their foreheads, their gesture of celebration. Later, Alan stood again in the observation dome, looking out at the stars, scattered between Earth and Ceridia. He thought about how a single virus, rabies, had nearly ended relations between species before they truly began. Yet that same virus had ultimately led to deeper understanding. Vlan joined him, standing comfortably nearby, no longer keeping fearful distance. What are you thinking, Dr. Weber? The Ceridian asked. That fear can either divide us or bring us together, Alan replied. It depends on how we respond to it. Vlan's skin glowed softly in the dim light. My people have learned much from humans about facing fear. Perhaps in time we can show you what it means to live without the constant alertness your evolution demanded. I think that's what this station really represents, Alan said, gesturing to the structure around them. Not just scientific cooperation, but the exchange of evolutionary perspectives. Your people never had to fear mind-altering pathogens. Mine never experienced your kind of collective security. Together they watched as Earth rose into view, a blue jewel in the darkness. From this distance it was impossible to see the countless microscopic threats that had shaped human evolution. Yet those invisible enemies had helped create a species resilient enough to reach the stars and face the unknown with determined courage. Humans, don't fear nothing, Vilan said quietly. You fear everything worth fearing. You simply refuse to let that fear stop you. Maybe that's the real lesson of Unity Station, Alan replied. Not that either of our species is fearless, but that together we can face our fears better than we ever could alone.